Hello everyone, it's Raza Van Werder, aka Kelly Everts, talking about my cultural life, which was very rich, cultural, educational. Now, also what I'm going to get into now is how my mother got involved with the new boyfriend husband named Marius Bernotas. While we were with the Lithuanian church, I believe it was called Annunciation, and we had this wonderful life. My mother produced a play which was several times presented. We were all in it. Us kids were all in it. She was the director. My father ran a school affiliated with the church. I found this out later. My mother was having an affair with the priest. There was a young single priest. And my mother, I found out years later as an adult, had an affair with him. Well, that went sour, or she got tired of him or ended it, whatever. Then she got infatuated with the organist in the church, Marius Bernotas. Now, that was his second job. He had another job. I remember when we lived at Delancey Street, we used to see him all the time. I think that's because my mother probably started to have her affair with him. So that's how I became an artist, because I think he was working in a paper factory. And he used to bring reams of paper, and I used to draw every day, draw. And my father encouraged me, and I became a very good artist. That was from the age of 4 or 5. I became a really excellent artist. Which, when I was traumatized at the age of 10, I said, I'll never draw again. But I still had some skill left over. And when I was 16 years old, I still had my vestigial skill, and my talent was still inside of me. And one of my teachers, my art teacher, asked me, a black lady in a school I was in New York City, she told me about this art contest of 5 schools in the city. She asked me to enter it. So I entered it, and I won 2nd place in 5 schools. It was called Water Tower. I sat in my room, and I looked out the window on South 1st Street, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And 356 South 1st Street, Brooklyn, between Hooper and Keep, Williamsburg. And I sat looking outside my 6th floor window, and there was a water tower. They don't have any water towers anymore. And the street. And I just simply watercolored the picture of the street and the water tower and called it Water Tower. And I won 2nd place in 5 schools. And it took me 4 days, and the boy that won 1st place took him 3 weeks to do his picture. So I still had talent. So anyway, that's another subject. The fact that my mother first had an affair with the priest and then with the organist in the church, Marius, brought forth a scandal. And that was the demise of our cultural life, our life with the church. My father did not go on the outs with them. In fact, he got a $500 loan from the chief priest, I remember him, in the church to buy our farm, which my mother it was a whole con game. So my mother convinced my father to get Marius Bernotas to move in with us when we moved from Delancey Street to Van Buren Street in Newark. And my father took me. He took me with him, and I remember to this day, to visit Marius Bernotas. And I remember my father proposing to him to come live with us, that he would get room and board for $6 a week. $6 a week sounds like nothing, but you've got to understand, this was 1950, I'm trying to think now, what year would this be? 1956 or 57. So inflation, you multiply this by at least 10 times. My father was a bit of I don't know if you could call him a miser, but he was very concerned about money and very conservative, extremely conservative. Whereas my mother was the opposite. She was reckless with money. I'm in between. I think I'm normal. Bit of a miser at times, bit of a big spender at times, you know. I'm just right, I think. But I think she preyed on my father's conservatism and fear of being broke and poor to convince him to let Marius move in with us so she could continue her affair with him under our roof. But there was more to it than that. We benefited greatly from Marius because Marius had a car. My father never drove. Marius had a car. He drove a car. And that was extremely beneficial to the family for, if nothing else, recreation. And we enjoy the recreation. So we went, Dad and I went, and my father presented him, come live with us for $6 a week, etc. You have your own room and board. You don't have to worry about meals. Mom will cook them. You know, my wife will cook them, blah, 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 blah. That was inviting disaster. My father was wrong to invite this, but who knows? I'm not his judge. He did what he had to do at the time. We all do what we got to do. But I remember when Marius lived with us. Well, first of all, we couldn't go back to the Annunciation Church because she had got done with the priest. Now she stole. And I think the priest and Marius, they were maybe, this is a maybe, might have been bisexual, might have been having an affair, but I don't know. That could just be my imagination, you know. So, and I remember a very pleasant thing that we used to do with Marius having a car. I think my father worked at night. I know that he used to work in a hat factory. I don't know if he was still working in the hat factory. It was really hard work, and he worked at night, the night shift. And we used to all pile into Marius' car, and my mother made the most wonderful, delightful, delicious sandwiches. A whole ton of, big bag of sandwiches for all of us. And we were, like I said, we weren't rich or anything, so, and there was nowhere to go at night. You know, by at night, I don't mean the middle of the night, but I mean like in the evening, you know, when the sun went down and Dad went to work. So Marius would drive, and we would all go someplace and park. That's all we did. We drove around, and we would park and eat the sandwiches. Now, later on, I do remember it improved from that. Well, let me just one more little thing. That strikes me as two things I remember very clearly about. Once we had a slight accident, and Marius and another guy brushed cars, and the guy got out, and Marius was yelling and screaming in broken English, and the guy said, "Calm down, you've got all your children here, relax, take it easy." And Marius was a very excitable, emotional person. I think he was traumatized. I think he suffered from PTSD from the war and everything in Lithuania and Germany. In Lithuania, not Germany. Well, I'm not sure. Maybe Germany was part of it. But no, I take that back. Let's take that back. Lithuania, not Germany. Okay. I remember once he, without knowing it, parked in the driveway of a restaurant. You know, there was a long driveway. Without knowing where he was parking, he saw a spot, he pulled in. And the owner of the restaurant came out and told him, "You're parked in our driveway." And instead of just moving, he started arguing. Which, that's why I remember it, because it was so crazy that he was arguing. All he had to do was move. But he was arguing. Maybe he didn't understand English. His English wasn't good. Later on, because, and I'm saying all the guys, the guys, not all, I mean there weren't tons of them, but there were a few. The guys that my mother hooked up with, it always benefited us. So later on during the day, you know, I remember we were given trips to two different lakes. One was Lake Hapatkang, which I didn't care for too much, because it was very rocky and very hard on your feet when you went in the water. I didn't care for it that much. And another one that I loved was Deer Lake. They had a whole grounds fenced in, and they had a whole flock of deer. So Deer Lake, I loved. So that was a benefit from Marius.